Claude Monet and the painting of the water lilies. He's with me in Toronto. This fascinating relationship between Monet and Georges Clemenceau.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
A lot of the book is about Clemenceau.
Yes. He was such an important figure in Monet's life for many years.
This was a guy who was a journalist, right?
That's right.
And then he became premier of France during the war, and he was known as the Tiger.
That's right.
What was the relationship?
No one knows. No one has ever been able to figure out where the two of them met. But they really became friends by the 1880s and 1890s. And if you ask Clemenceau in the last 40 years of his life who his best friend was, he would have unhesitatingly have said Claude Monet. They wrote dozens of letters to each other. Clemenceau has all sorts of fond nicknames for Monet, like Old Lunatic, or he writes a dear old crustacean, or he called him the Abominable Hedgehog, which is a great description of him. But his own nickname, as you say, the Tiger, was well earned because he was a terrifying figure.
Yeah.
Everyone was intimidated by him, and he comes into the story I tell about the last dozen years of Monet's life because of the fact that he really is the one who made Monet come out of retirement. Monet really had down tools in his early 70s because of problems with his eyesight.
When Alice died?
That's right. The death of his wife in 1911, death of his son as well in early 1914. His eldest son, Jean, died at the age of 46. And therefore, Monet felt his legacy was complete. And Clemenceau was really the one who realized that Claude Monet could never be happy if he wasn't painting. Painting might have driven him to distraction, as I say, but Monet lived to paint. And a Monet who was not painting was going to die very soon.
Tell me a bit about the war and how the war had an impact on Monet himself and on his work. He felt conflicted, I take it, that this apparent self-indulgence and frivolity of painting water lilies during this horrific carnage of the war. What was the conflict that raged within him?
Well, if you think about it, he got his desire back for painting in 1914, and of course, just then the war broke out. And so the question for him is, what does he do? Does he continue to paint? And the answer is, yes, he did. And he painted maniacally through the First World War and did a massive amount of work and confessed his guilt at doing what he called experiments with light and color when more than a million French were dying on the Western Front and when Paris was being bombed by Zeppelins and warplanes. But in many ways, painting the water lilies was his way of keeping the war at bay and really keeping himself sane during this time of utter madness when humanity was descending into this terrible abyss. He then stared into the beautiful abyss of the water lily pond. But I also point out in the book that if we see the water lilies as an escape, on the one hand, from the war, the war also infuses them, especially things like House of the Weeping Willows. And they're really, as I discussed in the book, a symbol of mourning. And some of Monet's paintings of trees, and these are almost self-portraits of Monet. We can see these twisted, gnarled trees sort of straining. I think of Tom Thompson's The Jack Pine, painted at almost exactly the same time, in the same way as a kind of self-portrait. It's almost like they're paintings of a Calvary or something like that. The paintings of sacrifice, paintings of defiance, paintings of mourning. And so the war, Monet could not escape the war. His only surviving son, Michel, and his beloved stepson, Jean-Pierre Hocheday, were on the Western Front at this time. And so the war somehow had to work its way into these canvases.
Your other books talk about Leonardo and Michelangelo. Giants.
Yes.
Absolute giants confronting and contending with great human issues.
Right.
Life, death, what are we doing here? Enormous canvas on which to put their kind of philosophical understanding.
Right.
Your guy, Claude, is doing water lilies. I mean...
But in some ways, that's an equally strong statement because of the fact that it's not the content. He's not trying to paint realistically. He claimed that he was painting realistic. He was painting exactly as he saw. But he was not trying to put theological messages. He was an atheist, and so he would never have done a religious painting. what he was trying to do was, I suppose, give the human experience to us through what he could see, through the landscape. And for Michelangelo, the forum through which he wanted to express his feelings about humanity was the human body.
Yeah.
And for Monet, it was through the landscape. He will, by and large, rid the landscape of the human figure and show it in its own right in order to tell us something about our experience, the experience of humanity within the landscape and within time. I think one of the best writers on him was his friend Gustave Geoffroy, who said a lot of people look at Claude Monet's paintings and all they see are bright, sparkling water,
Pretty.
Very, very pretty paintings. But he was arguing that Monet, and I think he did have a point, that Monet was trying to show us our place within the cosmos.
Did the water lilies more or less finish off Impressionism? Was there anywhere for Impressionism to go after the water lilies?
No, I think Monet was the last of the Impressionists. By the 1920s, and even by the first decade of the 20th century, art was moving on. And as early as 1905, a lot of art critics and a lot of young painters were saying Impressionism has had its day, we respect it, but it's something we have to go beyond, which is, of course, the way art history has to move forward. And Picasso and Cubism, Matisse and Fauvism, and then Surrealism was coming by the 1920s. Everything was beginning to change. And for those reasons, the water lilies in the Orangerie, when they first went on show in 1927, got very bad reviews because they were very much out of step with the artistic temper of the time, which post-World War I wanted a return to classical form, or at least wanted the hard edges of Cubism to give some sort of shape.
But you hooked me.
Good.
And I'm going to look at the paintings in a different way.
Right. He is a wonderful painter, and you have to stand in front of him, you have to back up, you have to walk across them.
Yeah.
You get your exercise.
And move your eyes. You said move the eye like a projector.
Yeah. And look at the delicacy of his brushwork up close. Look at in some places, the violence of it, the thickness of it, the 15 layers of pigment, and get your exercise walking around in front of these paintings. They're remarkable.
It's good to see you again, my friend.
Likewise.
Thank you for coming in.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Ross King is the award-winning author of many books on art. His new one is called Mad Enchantment, Claude Monet and the Painting of the Water Lilies. This morning he was with us in our studio in Toronto. Oh, how time flies. That's our program for October 23rd, 2016. It's time to thank the people who work so hard every week to put it inside your radio. Our producers are Pauline Holdsworth, Celine Vartanian, and Chris Watskow. Our music producer is Dean Pless. Our documentary editor is Karen Levine, and the executive producer of the Sunday edition is Susan Mahoney. Now you can hear parts of the program anytime at cbc.ca/The Sunday Edition. The podcast is also available on our website, can you believe it? Or on iTunes. And you can catch us later tonight on the Sunday Edition around midnight. Our email address is thesunday@cbc.ca. Listen to that piano. Or, friends, you can click on the contact link on the website, or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, at CBC Sunday. Now, next week on the program, Anne Carson. In the world of contemporary poetry, the Canadian writer and classics scholar is a giant. She has won countless awards, including a MacArthur Genius Grant. Her otherworldly, erudite poetry delights her fans and strikes fear into the hearts of her detractors. In her new collection, it's called Float, she meditates on myth, memory, and language in a series of 22 chapbooks that are meant to be read, in fact, free fall. Anne Carson will be my guest. Thank you for spending your morning or part thereof with us. The Sunday edition, number 940, will be here in 7 days. I'm Michael Enright.
This is CBC News. I'm Helen Surgener. Workers are being sent home from Muskrat Falls after protesters began occupying the site yesterday. They're concerned the hydroelectric project in central Labrador could poison their food.